Secondly, we must expand our ecclesiastical cartography, especially the role of the West in global Christianity. What do I mean by ecclesiastical cartography? Well, surely you can remember those old maps of in the Middle Ages produced of the world. Maps of the world produced by Europeans during the medieval period reveal much about their worldview. Europe and the Mediterranean mean medias terra, meaning Middle Earth. This is before we discovered hobbits. Europe conceptualized itself as the middle of the world, Mediterranean, just like the Chinese call themselves, the Middle Kingdom. This is a common cultural reality. Saw themselves at the center of the world, and their map is filled with striking details of Europe and the Mediterranean, beautifully adorned with various Christian images. But as you go out from those maps into the edges where Asia and Africa exist, it blends hazily into the margins amidst drawings of savages, dog-headed kings, and grotesque demons. These maps reveal as much about European theology as their cartography. And I am really indebted to Jonathan Bonk, my good friend from the Overseas Ministry Study Center, who first I heard use this phrase, ecclesiastical cartography. What he meant is how we in the church view the world and our place in it. There's no doubt that our physical cartography has improved a lot, but we still need to make dramatic adjustments in our ecclesiastical cartography. I'm particularly concerned as the sun rises on the majority world church that we will face this second problem here in the West. Sometimes the emphasis on global Christianity and directives to notice what's happening in the South or global South, majority world church, has caused Westerners, especially white European descent Americans, to feel like God is moving everywhere else but here. The shifting center of Christian gravity has moved beyond us. And we are, if I can use the phrase in a different context, left behind. And there was a period in theological and missiological literature which framed it in this way. We found ourselves in the ecclesiastical equivalent of the woodshed. We're left hanging by a thread as an embarrassing post-colonial whipping boy, a poster child for everything the church has done wrong. But mercifully, thanks to the work of Gambian scholar Laman Sane or Korean scholar Moonjang Lee, among others, we're now making further adjustments to our ecclesiastical cartography by realizing there is a vitally important distinction, please hear me, between a post-Western Christianity and a post-Christian West. Those are two different things. Christianity may indeed be emerging as a post-Western faith, but the West is also experiencing renewal as it rediscovers Christianity in the West as a movement beyond the Western experience of it. Far from being left behind, God is shaking us free from ecclesiastical provincialism and our equating Christianity with the Western forms of it. And we're beginning to explore new, previously unexplored country. In the 19th century, God commanded us to Christianize Africa. In the 21st century, He may very well be calling us to Africanize Christianity. That is to say, to remember and rediscover its supernatural power and the power of biblical narratives. He may very well be calling us in His sovereignty to recognize that the decline of Western Christianity may in fact be in order to shake us free from the weakened, domesticated version which became the standard bearer of Christendom. Today, the West is rediscovering the vibrancy of historic apostolic Christianity with all of its prophetic surprises and anointed vibrancy. And let me give you 3 signs of this. Sign number 1, the ethnic diversity of the global church is moving rapidly into North America. Global Christianity has never been just about Africans and Koreans and Chinese and Brazilians and Indians and others over there, but these are new realities in our own towns and cities. The largest churches in Western Europe today are pastored by Africans. The fastest growing churches in North America are the ethnic churches. Global Christianity is actually the greatest force for renewal in the Northern Hemisphere. We are finally discovering the truth of that wonderful phrase from the Lausanne movement, the whole church bringing the whole gospel to the whole world. Or as I've written on many occasions, every church on every continent, a sending and a receiving continent. Or to use the words of Samuel Escobar's title of his book, The Gospel from Everywhere to Everywhere. John Wesley once said famously, "The world is my parish." Today we could easily say, "The world is in my parish." The U.S. is today the only country in the world with members of every other country in it. Today, if Dorothy, in the wonderful book and movie Wizard of Oz, had left 1934 Kansas, and instead of being whisked away by a tornado to the land of Oz, she would have come right straight back down to Kansas, and in 2009, she still could have looked around to Toto and said, "Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore." Sign number 2, we must recognize the unique position we're in historically in 21st century Christianity. Christianity, again, unlike Hinduism or Islam, has had serial, not progressive growth. In other words, we can look at countless places which once were vital centers of Christianity, which are now languishing. And the center has moved to new places, part of the cultural vibrancy of Christianity. We can trace the shifting center of Christian gravity and vibrancy from Jerusalem to Rome, to Alexandria, to Constantinople, to Western Europe, and so forth. The shifting of a Christian cultural center is not new. It is an old, old story in Christianity. What is new is that today, for the first time in history, we are not seeing the single emergence of a single new center of Christian vibrancy. Instead, we are witnessing the simultaneous emergence of multiple centers of vibrancy. In China, in India, in Korea, in Brazil, and yes, here in the USA. The United States will continue to be a very important center of vitality. Even as late as the year 2050, the United States will still have more Christians than any other country. But amazingly, will be followed by number 2, China, number 3, Brazil, on 3 separate continents. We're experiencing the dawn, and your generation is welcoming a truly global Christian movement. More indigenous Christians rooted in more distinct places than at any time in the history of the world. Praise God. Third sign, we must understand that the center of Christian gravity conversation only refers to the aggregate of all Christians everywhere in the world. This says nothing about the center of gravity for financial resources for global Christian work. This says nothing about the center of gravity of graduate level theological education programs. This says nothing about the center of gravity for the availability of Christian books and literature. More Christians actually praise God in any given week in Spanish than any other language. But the actual language of theological textbooks is overwhelmingly in English. The center of gravity for graduate level theological education, as far as we can determine, will remain in North America for the entirety of your generation. Thus, we will live with a global disparity between where you can get theological level training, such as this place, and where the most Christians globally actually live. I noted earlier that the most representative Christian, globally speaking, would be a 24-year-old Nigerian woman. However, the most representative graduate student of theology remains overwhelmingly white and Western, though we're seeing tremendous strides by African Christians, Indians, Koreans, among others. This makes Asbury Theological Seminary uniquely poised to assist in the training and equipping of the global church, and quite frankly, to be learning from the global church new ways of evangelism and church planting which are needed once again here in the West.